Now to Lansing and the state budget negotiations at the Capitol. Lawmakers gave themselves an extension to reach a deal. Today, we are learning more about where things stand on funding for free school lunches and a big new tax on marijuana sales. 13 on your side, political reporter Josh Albertus has an update from the Capitol.
Yeah, we are going to be creeping into the evening pretty soon here, and yet still no final budget to be seen. We are still relying on that continuation budget that was passed early yesterday morning that has short-term funding, keeping government departments open for a few more days while a final deal is worked out. But still, places like schools waiting for a final deal to determine a lot of their long-term funding over the next year. But we are getting some updates as to how this process is still shaking out. You have some areas where there seemed to be agreement this week as they hash out the finer details. For example, a top House Republican lawmaker telling me Tuesday night that at that point, it seemed as though lawmakers had agreed to make universal taxpayer-funded school meals a line item in the budget. Money would be designated for that purpose in the budget. A proposed 24% wholesale tax on marijuana that was passed by the House last week seems to be a central part of this whole deal for road funding's sake, but has certainly caused some rumblings and pushback here in Lansing. Protesters here this morning, and there's talk as to whether or not the Senate will have enough votes to get it through. The House Speaker spoke to reporters earlier today. He told us the government would shut down if the Senate cannot pass the tax, but doesn't think that will happen. He also had something to say as to whether we could expect more short-term funding if a deal takes longer than expected.
But what I've made clear is there will not be a second government shutdown prevention plan. That was one time. It did what it was intended to do. It prevented a government shutdown, and the Democrats gladly voted for it in the Senate, just like they're gladly going to vote for the marijuana tax.
Now, there is talk at the Capitol that there is that potential for movement later on tonight. But if that is the case, like Speaker Hall said, that there will be no more emergency shutdown prevention plans, then they will only have until October 8th. That's next Wednesday. That's when the current short-term funding runs out, and they will have to have a budget in place to keep government funding going. In Lansing, Josh Albertus, 13 on your side.